we go.
All right. What is happening, everybody? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Guys, tonight I am thrilled. With me right here is Dr. Jonathan Welton. I've already talked to you guys a little bit about how excited I am about tonight. And so without further ado, I'm going to skip the usual hellos to everybody so we can get right into everything. But Jonathan, can you hear everything? We doing all right?
Yeah, loud and clear, buddy.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, guys. So to intro Jonathan real quick, I just want to explain that I came to know Jonathan back in 2015. I've told you guys this story before when my friend handed me a book called Raptureless. And I read that book cover to cover on the airplane home and just really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I thought, who on earth wrote this? This is for somebody who grew up in the church. Grew up with Left Behind theology on the end times and a lot of other things. Thought I knew the Bible very well, but honestly didn't know Revelation or any of that stuff very well at all. But I thought I did because I'd eaten up a lot of the popular stuff. Anyways, read that book, changed a lot of my life, set me on a course of doing research for 10 more years after that. And Jonathan's name just kept popping up along the way. And over the course of time, he's written several other books, had a university of his own for a while, or an academy. And then he's done shows, been all over the world. And I personally think, and this is not blowing smoke, that Jonathan's actually one of the great thinkers of our time. He just hasn't really made it on the bigger stage yet, which I do think will come eventually. And so it is my honor and pleasure to host Jonathan Welton. So Jonathan, you want to just introduce yourself a little bit?
Thanks, man. Well, I don't know if I could top that, but yeah, I'm 41 years old. I live outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. My wife and I have been married 20 years. We have 3 beautiful daughters, and I've been a part of a lot of things. The Raptureless book is one of 14 books that I've written, all kind of different topics, but always digging deeper to understand what scripture is really saying about something, and really trying to find something fresh in whatever topic I'm tackling. And it's taken me down a lot of different roads. A few years ago, I that academy that he mentioned, I crashed the whole thing. I had a big old ministry mess that I blew up, and had to spend about 5 years on the sidelines outside of ministry and rebuilding my marriage, my family, my identity, and really getting reestablished in myself and in the Lord. And it really took me down this very humbling journey. And through that, I actually became the head coach at a secular men's marriage organization, over 25 other coaches and 800 men in the membership, and amazing time there with a program called the Bulletproof Husband. And so I've kind of gone a lot of different places, but the last year or so, I've really been studying and digging into things on the political side, on the financial side, and have gone some different directions with that too. So I think there's a lot of crossover between the two of us. I love the topics that you're focused on for your live stream at Monday through Thursday. I think that's exactly where my heartbeat is at too. So I'm thrilled to be here with you.
I'm so glad to hear it. So, and just to jump on that as well, guys. One of the reasons I trust Jonathan and have actually continued to follow him is because I've seen his journey from what would be called a fallen warrior in the church to actually face it, go through it, and come out the other side better. And his own journey has personally impacted me from afar. You guys know some of my story with my marriage and stuff as well. And so on top of that, I just want to say he's battle tested and gone through it as well. And not just somebody who maybe ran from their issues and stuff. So in my opinion, that's even stronger. So the reason I asked Jonathan in tonight is we can get to theological questions later. I'm totally open to that, guys. And Jonathan is too. We've talked about that. But we do want to come at this on the political spectrum. You guys know my journey on that. And this is what we talk about mostly. And Jonathan, I believe, has a incredible insight into what is going on from a more macro perspective, politically, and the God perspective, I guess you could say, the spiritual perspective. And that's the main reason I brought him in. And so we're gonna talk through that a little bit tonight. So Jonathan, what's going on
in the world overall?
We're living through right now.
Yeah. Well, I would be so curious, since you're doing this 4 nights a week. What do you normally like? What's the foundation that your people understand? Where do you come from on this? And then I'll see where I can add some thoughts to it.
I love it. So this perspective we share on this channel, and I've been saying it since coming into this year. I told everybody in the end of 2023 that I was changing the focus of my channel to be fully on the election world events this year, because I believe 2024 is a crux year for history. Whereas coming out of this year, one way or the other, everything will be changing and shaping. And I don't think it's disappointed so far. So that's one where we're coming from. Obviously, you can tell by my titles, the headlines, everything. I do believe there's something special going on in the MAGA movement that is much bigger than just politics, much bigger than red versus blue. I think there's a soul of our country fight going on that also has to do with this. I mean, as America goes, so goes the world. Let me put it that way. And I do believe there has been a long-term, for lack of a better word, cabal sort of structure in place. A lot of it spiritual, but obviously physical as well, that has been trying to curb us into a communistic, humanistic, secular type world that is just beyond what any of us truly want. And it would be lack of freedom. It's very anti-human, honestly, to be completely. And so that's kind of the perspective of this channel and most of my viewers. Now, I have some wonderful viewers who disagree with a lot of the stuff, but they love me and the content anyway. So we still love you guys. But that is kind of the macro perspective of this channel. And then my gift, I guess you could say, is that politics has always come easy for me to understand what people are thinking and doing. And so it gives me insight into what's really going on a lot of the time. And that's how I present my perspective as we go, which is, again, why I brought you in, because of things I've heard you see and present.
Oh, that's awesome. Really gives me a grid of, how awake we're talking, it's
pretty awake here.
The woke versus the awake, you got the two movements.
Yeah. We just changed the vowel.
Yeah, it's wild how different how far apart those are. I kind of ended up in this spot. It's one thing has led to another, and I grew up in a middle class family. No, I'm kidding.
I was hoping we'd get.
I had to. Anyway, if I go back, actually, the book you mentioned, Raptureless, my take on eschatology, it's the subtitle of the book is An Optimistic View of the End Times. And so I hold an extremely optimistic view toward the future, that that when Jesus came, he established the kingdom. Yeah. It's a spiritual kingdom. It's leavening the whole batch of dough. Like he said in Matthew 13, you put a little bit of the yeast of the kingdom into the earth, and then it leavens the whole batch of dough. Over time, I believe that the kingdom has been growing and expanding for the last 2,000 years, but it doesn't grow in a straight line. It's more like the stock market. It's got ups and downs. It's growing
Yes.
along, and then Napoleon Bonaparte comes along, and it's growing, and then Stalin comes along, and it's growing, and Karl Marx, and it's this up and down progression, but the kingdom's always advancing.
Yeah.
To the point now we have 2.2 billion people on the planet Earth that claim that Jesus is their Lord, which is beautiful. That's 1 out of 3 on the human population, from a movement that started with 12 guys.
Yeah.
And now we've got 1 out of 3. It's wild. So the kingdom has been advancing, but what hit me about a year or two ago was the realization of pondering through what is holding back the kingdom from fully advancing, and really looking at the other side to go, oh, it's not just simply the church, the bride, not doing her job, not finishing, the job of advancing the kingdom, but we actually have an enemy. And the enemy, obviously, we know from Ephesians 6, it's not flesh and blood, but the demonic uses flesh and blood. The Holy Spirit uses flesh and blood. It uses us. And in the same way, demonic spirits get a hold of people and use them. And so we do have a war going on in this world, and it comes out through politics, and everything is spiritual at its core. Money is spiritual. Politics is spiritual. Spiritual things are spiritual. All of it's spiritual. So marriage is spiritual. All of this stuff is spiritual at its core. And the realization, like, I can't have these things separate. And we have to start speaking up. So that's what brought me down the journey of Awake, was there's something just as powerful. Well, it's a powerful force in this earth that's resisting the kingdom advancing, because we could be light years beyond where we are right now. And yet something has cut the Achilles heel of the church moving forward at the rate that we should be moving forward. And that, that's what's taken me down this road. What are you hearing? What are you hearing?
I love everything you just said. And the way I'd also say it is, a lot of my audience is not church speak as much, even though I think the vast majority of my audience are believers and stuff. But what I'd say is to jump on what Jonathan just said, guys, is when he says the church moving, he doesn't just mean a church like, charismatic or Catholic or anything like that. He actually just means the advancement of humanity in a way that's recognized by Jesus, in a way that people become better, healthier, help each other more. It's just a better society in general that does have that spiritual backing because of people being led by the Spirit and stuff like that. But it actually, and I personally, I use the word secular already tonight. I don't even believe in secular. I think like you said, everything is spiritual. I don't even like that term, but sometimes just because I don't know how better to say things or explain them. But I track with everything you just said. And I'd add to that one of my great frustrations in the church, I've been in the church since I was a child. My dad was a priest in the Anglican church, Episcopal and then Anglican later. But grew up Christian, known Jesus since I encountered him at 12, all that. And it's all very real, people. I just have too many experiences to, and you guys know my story anyways. But the point is that one of my great frustrations is that the church in America, especially, and I guess you could say all the East or the West, has been, it tackles politics. And when it does so poorly. And then it just tends to ignore it when it seems to be like one of the most important times to go into it, or the things that actually need to be said, in my opinion, because some of the stuff is kind of scary to say. And if Jonathan and I are going to continue to get into, a lot of it seems like conspiracy, but the truth is actually far crazier than most people want to believe. And especially in the church where it's, and this was go to the last days belief systems, the end times belief system, which encouraged the church to back out, to hunker up, bunker up, and not to kind of go out and actually believe that we could create generations upon generations and generations growing. So so that's where I'm tracking with what you're saying, Jonathan.
Yeah, I think another way to grasp what I'm saying, if somebody's not familiar with the concept of the kingdom or some of the phrasing I'm using, would be that simplicity of the Lord's Prayer. You know, everybody's heard this at some point in their life. And he says in the Lord's Prayer that it would be on earth as it is in heaven. So the actual goal, the actual mission of the church, as it's supposed to be for the last 2,000 years, is that we would bring what's in heaven into the earth.
Yes.
If you bring it that simple, because we've screwed up. I mean, we made some horrible choices over the years, and crusades and inquisitions and witch burnings, and we've done some bad crap over the years. And that's not what we're supposed to be doing, but we are supposed to be bringing heaven into the earth. Is there witch burnings in heaven? No, there's not. So we have a disconnect. But is there is the food in heaven loaded with chemicals from the pharmaceutical companies? No. Can you not drink the water because there's fluoride in it? No. It's the river of life, right? There's all these things that are screwed up in our world that you wouldn't have if you applied heaven to earth. If you look at it through that lens. And on the other side, you can think, okay, well, what is this demonic force, this devil, this cabal, whatever? What are they? They're trying to make hell on earth.
Yes.
A smart city where you're eating bugs for protein, where you got bicycle and electric car, and you can't travel and you can't go outside the four walls of your little town and city that you're locked in. Like they're trying to create a prison colony for humanity. That sounds like hell on earth.
Yes.
So we have heaven or hell. Those are your options. Which way do you want to vote this 2 weeks? Hell on earth or heaven on earth? This is where we're headed. And
exactly.
I don't think that's an overstatement. I mean, that's really what
I agree with you. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree with you. The and not to say, guys, that if Trump wins, it's heaven overnight. That'd be ridiculous. It's a process that's going to take hundreds, maybe thousands more years. And then there is still an ending to all this. What Jonathan and I don't, we don't believe that it's already been completely finished. We still believe Jesus has to come back and finish the job. Yeah. But we do believe there's a process of us getting us basically, let's say, as far as we can get on our own. Yeah. And then he finishes the job, kind of. So it'll never be utopia until Jesus comes back. But we can get a lot better. Let's put it that way. And for us, and my belief is that this election represents that turning point for a period of time. So if it goes the other way and things get worse, we're looking at, who knows, maybe a few decades, maybe a few 100 years. We don't know how long, but it'll be a setback until things can come back again and build back. Because the trend of history since Jesus is always getting better, even despite setbacks, as Jonathan already said. So Jonathan, one of the things I did want to ask you is because I've really enjoyed your deep dives into kind of how you've seen things play out in American history over the last 200 years or so, and what's kind of built us to this place. And if you wouldn't mind, I know it's a lot of detail. So however you feel like you can condense that, to just kind of give us an idea of how we got to where we're at now.
Yeah. Jesus says this little phrase. It's such a simple thing, and a lot of people miss it. He says you can either serve God or you can serve mammon.
Yes.
And good. Mammon is this word for materialism. It's about money. It's about greed. And you can either serve money or you can serve God. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't have money if you serve God. You can serve God and he can bless you and you can have money. That's fine.
Yes.
But which one's going to master you? Which one's going to be the Lord over your life? That's what he's saying. When I look at where we're at, the core of the dysfunction in our country is the financial system, because everything else flows down from there, whether it's the CIA and the drug trade and all the stuff that they've done, all the corruption, whether it's the pedophile networks and the celebrities and all the blackmail and all those systems. I mean, there's the pharmacy, the pharmaceuticals, the vaccine systems, the water, fluoride, there's so many different rabbit trails. And a lot of people like to pick their favorite, and they go, well, this one, I'm obsessed with it. Right now. My wife is so into the Kellogg's protest that's going on. And I'm like, that's not even showing up in my algorithm, but I don't follow the same crunchy moms that you do. So, whatever I get, but it's great. Like, that's awesome. I'm glad they're doing it, but it's like, well, RFK is going to fix that anyway, but all right, cool. But that we get on these little rabbit trails, but I think at the core, it's the money, it's the finances, it's the financial system at the core of this thing that has gotten us to where we are right now. And we don't even realize it. Like, we're all on this plantation working for the slave master, and we don't even see him. We don't even recognize that we're enslaved. We don't even recognize the matrix we're living inside of. And most people are asleep to it. And maybe they get a little view and they go, I think the FBI and the CIA were involved in Trump getting his ears shot. Like, and you're like, good. I'm glad you're slightly waking up. I'm glad you're starting to see a little bit of sunshine. But at the core of it is the Federal Reserve. And taking that back, because what people don't understand, if you go to another country and you get, let's say you're in Brazil and you get $1, in your hand, you're going to have their currency will say the Central Bank of Brazil. And most countries, it says Central Bank of whatever, Canada, Brazil, Mexico. Here, it says Federal Reserve Note. They were very clever to kind of hide that thing to make it sound like it's part of the government.
Yes.
It's not. It is a private organization that has taken our financial system entirely captive. And what we don't realize is we've been fighting this since the beginning. If we go back 200 plus years, we've been dealing with this.
Yeah.
In 1771, Alexander Hamilton was manipulated by the Rothschilds. He was close friends with one of them from London, and they dominated all the banking systems in Europe. And they got him to convince George Washington to put the first central bank into place. So 1791, you have the first central bank put into place, and it had a 20-year charter. So they said, okay, we'll do this for 20 years, but then we'll have to reassess whether we're going to do this or not. Now, Alexander Hamilton, he was in a total fight with Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson had spent time in Europe, and he had seen the dominance of these central bank systems and how corrupt and evil it was. And if you have ever seen the Broadway show Hamilton, you see these rap battles back and forth between Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson. Well, what we don't realize is Thomas Jefferson, being the good guy, was actually trying to fight against Alexander Hamilton, who's held up, ironically, by this Broadway and the whole theater, entertainment troupe as a hero of the founding fathers. And he actually brought in this toxic system. So the first central bank came in at 1791. It had a 20-year charter. And at the end of it, which would be 1811, they wanted to start another central bank. They wanted to extend the charter. Well, Congress narrowly actually shot it down in 1811. And so the Rothschilds pushed back and said, well, then we're going to ruin your economy and take you to war. That's the War of 1812.
Wow.
That's the war that nobody seems to know where that one came from. Why did it
I
happen?
honestly had never heard that before, but it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that one right there is the mark of they fought. They then destroyed our economy so hard that we then were, needing money. And so we needed to actually bow to the Rothschilds. And by 1816, we then chartered another 20 years for what was called the Second Central Bank. That's literally what they named it. I mean, it's just that in your face. Like, we went from the first central bank, second central bank, and they had 20 years. And during that 20 years, they were again burying us in debt, burying us in this system. And I'll talk about what's so toxic about it.
Yeah.
But that led to Andrew Jackson.
I did know this one. Yeah. This is so good, Jonathan. Thank you. Keep going.
So Andrew Jackson he comes along in 1832 and he begins to run on this thing of vote for Andrew Jackson and no bank. That's his whole motto.
Wow.
No bank. And so people were awake. People understood what was happening. They understood that the banking system was the devil. It was what they had to fight against. And yet he actually narrowly, he won the popular vote, but they took it over to Congress and they did some weird finagling and they gave it to, I think it was John Adams. And so
okay.
I'll have to look at that, but he got in for 4 years. Then when Andrew Jackson ran again, he got in and he ended it. So the Second Central Bank ended in 1836. Under Andrew Jackson, what he did is he released us from all national debt. Wow. He literally got us to the point where we had no national debt, and he removed this central bank. And here's what happens when you have a central bank. It's in the Constitution that the U.S. Treasury is supposed to create our currency. Yeah. Now, if they created our currency, we would have no inflation. This is the difference. When you get a central bank involved, it's like going out to a third party, like a loan shark, and saying, we will pay you to create our currency. And so the loan shark, the Federal Reserve or the first or second central bank, they create the currency and they loan it to the government at interest. That interest is the inflation. So we're actually paying them. So when you pay your income tax, where's your money going? It's going to pay interest on the loan between the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury and the government. So we're paying a loan shark, and we're paying the interest to the loan shark called the Federal Reserve.
That's unbelievable.
So we're not actually making any forward progress, and we'll never pay this back. Yeah. So we have this situation that we're trapped in, and we were out of it. Andrew Jackson had us out of it for 77 years. Wow. We were out of it from 1836. I might have the math off here, which year he ended it, but he came in 1836. But it wasn't until 1913 when the Federal Reserve got put into place. And at that point, they put it in very clever because they didn't call it the third central bank because people would have caught on to that. Instead, they made it sound like a government entity. Wow. And so most people think the Federal Reserve, it's federal, it's part of our government. Yeah. Like, nope, it's not. And that piece right there, we're still trapped in this. And so our 1913 until today, the money gets devalued endlessly. It just gets less and less valuable. So if you go back to 1913, you could take a $20 bill into the bank and say, I would like an ounce of gold. And they would trade with you. And now if you went into the bank, first of all, they wouldn't have any gold. And second, your $20 bill would not be enough. I think right now you'd have to pay about $2,800 for your ounce of gold. And that's what people don't catch is it's not because gold has become so much more valuable. That's part of it.
Yeah.
But another part of it is because your money is so much more worthless.
Yes.
What used to be $1 is now worth about a penny. So that transition has caused our money to be worthless. And then you bring in the 1960s. JFK is trying to get us off of this. He's saying we shouldn't have any secret societies. I want to take the CIA and shatter it to 10,000 pieces and scatter it in the wind. He's saying these statements that are going to get you shot. And but his two main things he did is he stood against the Vietnam War. He didn't want to send people. At the time, there was only 16,000 soldiers in Vietnam. Wow. And under LBJ, he took it up to 540,000. So there was like, we want the war machine. We want the military industrial complex that Eisenhower was warning us about. Yes. So they needed to push the Vietnam War forward, and he was getting in the way. But he also had started to create U.S. Treasury notes. You can actually go back and there's $5 bills called silver certificates that were actual bills that say U.S. Treasury on them instead of Federal Reserve note. And after they got rid of him, they then eliminated those and took it out and removed it. But they were trying to actually replace the Federal Reserve. He was trying to move us toward that. It was the same idea with Lincoln. He had what was called the greenbacks.
Greenback, yeah.
And he was trying to move towards something. And that's why they took him out too. See, at the time, every state had their own currency.
That's right.
So you could go to, let's say, Pennsylvania, and they're a commonwealth. But let's say you go to Michigan, and they have the State Bank of Michigan. And then you go over to Illinois, and it's the State Bank of Illinois. And what Abraham Lincoln was trying to do through the greenback was to create a federal version of a currency through the U.S. Treasury, which would have really established solidness separate from and closed the door to any future Federal Reserve. So that was where they're like, no, we're not doing that. Because they knew, like, given enough time, we'll get these people back into a central bank system. But if we can keep them fragmented in like a state version of banks, then we can centralize them later under our umbrella. So that's so interesting. It's been wild to watch the history, where we're at right now, where they've bankrupted the system so hard. The taxes are so high. The taxes aren't doing anything except paying interest on this loan between the loan shark and the government. And looking at going, what we're actually looking at on the other side of this is a system, a possible system. See, this is the what I see on the other side in the good sense. Trump gets in, Elon, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., all the good guys, the whole Avengers team. They're there. They're doing their thing. They're going to take on Thanos.
It's so true, too. It's so weird. It's amazing.
Well, you get that team in place, and what are they going to do? Well, there's the obvious things we've heard, the chemicals in the water, the food, that's beautiful. But here you have us becoming energy independent, drilling, pulling up the energy from our own country, putting on tariffs. So that brings manufacturing home. It then fixes the trade deals between other countries. So everything goes down. But how do you fix the fact that we have $37 trillion national debt? How do you fix the brutal level of taxes that we're living under? Well, the whole thing is a Ponzi scheme between this loan shark and our government. And to actually set up the system in a way to say, we're going to audit you. You're not a part of the government. You're a private corporation.
Yeah.
And you've been doing shady trash for years. We're going to audit you. We're going to close you down. We don't owe you a cent. You owe us. We're sending you to prison and Guantanamo or whatever. We're done with you.
Yeah.
And you shut that thing down. That's going to deal with a massive amount of our debt like that.
Absolutely.
And you move toward a treasury currency from the government. According to the Constitution, it's required to be backed by gold or silver. So it absolutely has to be. The only two taxes that are allowed in our Constitution, the original Constitution, is tariffs and a sales tax. So you get back to that where it's like, okay, now I don't have 40% of my income just gone like that.
Yeah.
That alone, if I can get somebody to hear that and go, wait, so you're saying if I vote for Trump, my gas is going to cost half as much and I'll have 40% of my paycheck given back to me?
Yeah.
Like, that's what we're talking about. Like, people don't seem to grasp the direction of where this ends up, where this actually could be if we got out of this system with you're free from the loan shark. And we haven't even understood the system we're trapped in right now.
So true. I mean, the good news is people, it's been simplified enough for most people to start waking up. I truly believe that in America, we're probably between 55 and 65% of adults are voting Trump this election. We don't, they're going to play with the numbers, but if it was all fair and square, which is why I have a lot of hope, because I think that'll overwhelm it. But I mean, when you said the Federal Reserve, my day job is marketing, and I was like, what great marketing calling it the Federal Reserve, because even today, if Trump tried to run on ending the Federal Reserve, we saw how that worked out for Ron Paul. He got like 5% of the vote, even though he was right. And I love Ron Paul for starting this movement on a bigger trend, waking a lot of people up. You can't run on it because people don't understand. And you talk about it, it sounds so crazy. So you have to show them. And that's why Trump, which I fully believe, all this talk about taxes, it's a Trojan horse. There's a reason he's eliminating a new tax every week.
Yeah.
You get a tax cut and you get a tax cut.
I don't know if you heard the one today that he literally, he said he was doing an interview at a barber shop, which apparently I didn't see it, but I was just listening to a report about it. And he said, I think we should remove taxes, income tax, if you're a firefighter, a first responder,
I did see
in
this.
the military. I think those were the main ones. A police officer that, you're serving this
civil
country.
Servants, basically.
Yeah. We shouldn't be taxing you. And he said, if you're living in another country, paying tax in that country, we shouldn't be taxing you as well. You shouldn't be double taxed.
Wow.
Which I'm like, man, this is.
You see what he's doing,
rolling out the little snippets to get to, hey, we're done with this tax stuff.
He's slowly, I mean, when you factor in everybody he's said so far, which is the service industry, now civil servants, I can't remember, there's a couple others in
overtime, Social Security.
When you put all that in, you now have basically 90% of lower middle class, lower income, and then the senior class all being like tax free. Which, let's be honest, mostly are anyways. They don't know it, but but the idea is spreading because you need those votes and you need those people to jump on to change things. And it's also, obviously, there's people today who are like, might have been voting Kamala, who are like, well, hold up a sec. Trump's not going to tax me. It works every time. It's brilliant. Like, he's the best marketer ever. Yeah. And he's building this up. But again, because if you just went out there and you're like Federal Reserve, I mean, think of the backlash from the media and the stock market people, Wall Street. If you went after the Federal Reserve like this, these people worship Jerome Powell, Alan Greenspan, Bernanke, Yellen. They worship these people. They are the greatest people ever. Greenspan, I remember in the 90s being like, we've got things fixed. There could never be another recession. We've got it all. It's like, and they believed him. These people, it's like, And then, anyways, the point is though, is that we've built exactly like you said, even without thinking about it, without realizing it, our comfort in this system is so enwrapped that it's going to take something bigger to break it out. But I do truly believe Trump is Trojan horsing that. Whether or not it happens in his run, I do believe, because I've been telling my people, number one, I said back in March, JD Vance was my number one pick for VP. So I could not be more stoked he's in there.
Wow.
Yeah, I love that guy. And I think he's turned most of the critics around towards him. But I know there's some Peter Thiel stuff. People have issues. I don't think it's as big an issue as people think. But I truly believe one of the big things Trump will get done with all these people on his side is getting the elections fixed. And if the elections get fixed and all this stuff happens under Trump, he gets as much done as possible. I think we'll get JD Vance for 8 years after. And I think JD is going to, it's kind of like a David Solomon thing to me, where I could see Trump being the David fighting the wars, and then Vance gets to build on it. Vance or somebody like him. I do think it's going to be Vance, but I'm open to whoever else. But the MAGA movement is truly God's successors now, and it's going to be bigger than Trump. Which the last 4 years, one of the reasons that's actually overall, I think it'll be a good thing it happened so long as we win this election, is it solidified that.
Yeah. And I'm not sure. I'd love to hear your theories on what's going to happen with the election, because I go back and forth between if it was fair, it's going to be the most crazy landslide we've ever seen ever. Like bigger than Nixon, bigger than Andrew Jackson, like
Absolutely.
biggest landslide ever. But on the other side, if they could do their cyber attack, shut the whole thing down, say, we got to delay it for however long. Maybe the military gets involved in helping host the election, because they used to. I mean, the Posse Comitatus Act was actually to remove the military used to run the elections up until the Civil War. And then the southern states said, well, we don't trust the military because they just whooped us. So we would rather not have the military run our elections. So, but we might need to actually go back to paper ballots with the National Guard running it. And
I'm all for it.
Let's get a legit number. But I was thinking today, the idea of how shocked would people be if they rig it and make it look like Kamala wins. Nobody's going to believe that.
Nobody.
And maybe that's how they actually can expose how 2020 was stolen. And, maybe we need to go through another BS election to actually bring that to the table, have the Supreme Court finally look at it and go, you know what? This was BS. 22 was BS. 20 was BS.
No joke.
And we know it's in the executive orders as far as the military's been watching this.
We've seen all that. Space Force.
So it's like they have all the information. How do we actually bring it to the table? Maybe it actually needs to be, maybe we actually need to be robbed one more time, and then it goes to the court.
It's possible. I have a couple theories, and I think it could go either way. I've told my channel that I'm at the point now where I think one way or the other, Trump's going to be in office in January. I truly believe that. And just like what you said, I see very similar scenarios playing out. I think that the numbers right now are crazy, the way the momentum has shifted towards Trump in the last 2 weeks. If this was not an existential election, let me put it that way, the media would already be saying it's going to be a landslide. They would. The data is too obvious. And anybody who thinks otherwise is not paying attention. They're just not seeing stuff. And I get it. I'm a data nerd, so there's a lot of stuff you probably won't see that I look for. But the data is just, with the early voting being so up Republican. And so my thinking is for one thing, we've avoided a lot of the worst case scenarios that a lot of people already thought could happen. There was no pandemic this year. They sure tried with
Yeah,
monkeypox and
they
stuff, but
tried.
you'd
Yeah.
figure if they wanted to try something, they'd do something that not only gay men could get, but it's they're not the smartest people. But they tried a pandemic. I think they've tried a couple other things we probably don't even know about. I think Elon getting X in 2022 has actually saved us from considerable things.
Yeah.
Because now we can undo a narrative within 5 minutes. It's
Yeah.
sick how fast X works on that. So I think it's completely possible we overwhelm the vote, and there's even a win on election night. I think it's within the realm of possibility. And one of the things I've been saying too is, Trump's out there saying, I'm going to go after anybody who cheats in this election. And when he says that, every time it looks more like he's going to win. Every time he goes another notch up, in my opinion, there's another 2 to 5% of the cheaters who back out saying it's not worth it for me. I'm like, we don't know if we're going to pull this off. The other thing I keep looking at is how scared they actually are and how panicked they are. And we saw Obama and Biden talking this last week. They obviously are worried. They're not acting like people who have it in the bag, which they did in 2020.
True. Yeah.
And so because of all that, I think 2 options are going to happen. One, it's so overwhelming on election night. We snag like Virginia, which they never could have expected, maybe even New Mexico, and he just wins outright. And it's like, wow, that's incredible. And even the media now seems to be jumping to attack Kamal a little bit. We have senators in Pennsylvania running ads saying we hang out with Trump, or we side with him on stuff. They're bailing out. That's all panic to me. And that says that there's so much infighting going on the Democrat side right now that there's a wing that is just like, you guys screwed up, we're going to cover ourselves. And then there's still the other one still fighting to make it happen. And I don't know if they'll have enough. If they have enough, it'll be so obvious, so egregious that the American people will not accept it. And because the American people will not accept it, we're going to go through a process. Hopefully it's not a violent one, but one way or the other, we're going through a process that will reject Kamala Harris completely in the Democratic Party. And I hope that's not the way we got to go, because it'll be messier. It'll be uglier. I think it'll be a little longer healing for the country to get through, because I think one way or the other, the old election stuff will come up. But I see those 1 or 2 ways. I think is what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things still outstanding. I feel like when nothing happens for a day at this point, it's like a calm before the storm.
Yeah.
like this is not over on November 5th in my mind. Like even if he wins and he's declared the winner, which would be a shock. And so, settling to actually hear that, but then what did they do?
The real fight's really after.
Yeah, because the top echelon, this is life and death for them. I mean, they've been. I think one of the best was the investigative journalist Whitney Webb that wrote the 2 volumes, One Nation Under Blackmail. And it's like 1,000+ pages, and it goes through how pretty much every person in government is blackmailed in one way or another, and it's controlled behind the scenes. And it's the P. Diddy's, it's the Harvey Weinsteins and the Jeffrey Epstein's and all of them. There's a whole system that they're all trapped in, and at the end of the day, these guys are fighting for their life.
They are.
That's what people don't seem to realize at the lower levels. Like they could say, hey, peace out, I'm not going to deliver 10,000 ballots that are fake.
Yeah.
And they're fine. They can go back to their whatever and live their life and not make the bribe of $10,000 or whatever it is and move on. But up here, it's like, if he gets in, I'm dead. And I mean, they've said that. I mean, Hillary Clinton has said that, like, I'll be swinging from a rope. Like,
they know it.
That's a weird thing to say, Hillary. Why? That's a good admission of something, and Adam Schiff has said stuff like that, and Chuck Schumer said stuff like that. Like, you guys know you're in trouble. Like, this is And yeah, so it's wild times ahead as
It is.
far as immigrants and what's going to happen afterward too.
Mhm.
Like wow.
Oh, next year, well, leading after the election up until next year, when say Trump's first 6 months to 12 months,
Yeah.
it's going to be absolutely insane. And my hope is that the vast majority of Americans get to just watch it on TV. That's my hope. And I do think, honestly, it probably will be a lot like that. Even in the Civil War, most people weren't involved. You just heard stuff, but history focuses on the craziness, and we'll all be watching it, being like, "Oh my god!" But I do think one thing that makes me laugh is that they passed that law after Trump left that makes it impossible for now the VP to send votes back, and it's so much easier to certify now. It's like when Harry Reid killed the filibuster for judges. They always just shoot themselves in the foot because they can't think ahead enough.
Yeah.
They're so desperate for their power in the moment. And I have so much hope, just like you, long term.
Yeah.
Midterm, I don't know what's going to look like, but the fact we've gotten this far and Trump survived the assassination attempts, that woke up a lot of people. Again, not being able to get a pandemic going, not being able to get Trump arrested or get anything that would one thing we always thought would happen this year, or at least a lot of people thought, there'd be riots everywhere and stuff, and none of that happened. So no martial law.
Yeah.
If they postpone the election at this point, World War III hasn't started. They've tried, or people would argue it has. I'm saying full blown hasn't happened.
Right.
That's been held off. I could just see God's hand everywhere with the hurricanes. This Milton one, how it just disappeared pretty much. It obviously didn't disappear, but way less than it was expected. The eye just broke as soon as it hit shore. Total miracle. I feel like the people have just been praying, and God's been intervening in a big way, and it just gives me so much hope that maybe we get through this with way less mess than we all thought would happen. And it wasn't that we were wrong to say these things could happen, but that we avoided it through prayer and through more and more people waking up, showing up, free speech, calling everything out. I think all of that together might be enough to get through this, not smoothly, but more smoothly than we all expected. And that's my hope. And the closer we get, we're 2 weeks away tomorrow. It's wild. The closer we get, I think the harder it is for them to really pull something massive off. But I could be wrong, and we'll see. But we've made it this far.
Well, that being said, what about the markets? What are your thoughts with that? Because that's something I'm watching pretty close right now.
I'm glad you asked, and my audience is very glad you asked too, because that's what I spent the first year on my channel talking about.
Nice.
Well, I've been wrong about one thing. I thought the economy would have crashed by now. I didn't think they had enough because they were already pushing so hard to prop it up that I didn't think they could make it to the election. But they have. But they're obviously running on fumes. There's a lot of signs. Yeah. And so once the election's over, I do believe we're going to start seeing major signs of breaking. I don't think there's any way we avoid a very hard economic season. And my hope is it only lasts 6 months to 18 months instead of years on years on years. And I do think Trump unleashing oil, tariffs, I do think we can turn it around relatively quick. And I also think that the opportunity of the tanking market is going to allow him to get a lot more done real quickly. Kind of like Obama did. Never waste a good crisis, remember? So I think that's going to happen. In preparation, I've been telling my people, there's all kinds of things. And I do actually want you to speak on this for a while, because I think you even have more expertise on this than me in just general preparation. But, make sure you have some gold and silver, something precious metals. Banks might be closed temporarily. We might see all kinds of insanity. And then for those of us who've invested in the stock market, there's several stocks that, the entire market is as rigged as the political sphere, if not worse. And because of that, there's going to be several opportunities in the short term as volatility comes in, whether it's short squeezes, stuff like that. And I do believe we see just wildness all over. And yeah, so that I think there'll be an epic market crash. And again, I just hope it all leads to rebuilding in the right way, you know.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's like Napoleon actually said, "Never interfere with an enemy when they're in the process of destroying
Mm.
themselves."
That's so
And
good.
that's really what we're watching is
Mhm.
the brilliance of letting them run their system off a cliff. Because
Mhm.
George Soros said back in March of 2020, this is the time, this
Mm.
COVID pandemic, this is the time for the Great Reset. We need to fully commit. We need to go for it.
Yes.
So they've been running this thing this
Mhm.
direction for their Great
Mhm.
Reset, which the
Yeah.
idea of we're going to destroy the economy
Mhm.
and move everybody over into the rescuing savior, which will be the central bank digital currencies. And so we're
Mhm.
going to move you over to CBDCs, and that's going to be the solution to fix everything. And yet over here, it's like, all right, let them drive it into the ground and then move us back to a gold-backed currency by the
Yeah.
US Treasury
Mhm.
with a tariff system as well as with crypto and
Mm.
all of that replacing the Swift system.
Yes.
So you have two things that could come out, but they both are going down this tunnel of everything's going to get destroyed in the process.
Mhm.
It's
Yes.
just, are we going to end up in the CBDC or are we going to end up in freedom and
Mhm.
prosperity and abundance?
Yes.
And so, them destroying themselves, that's where they're aimed. And
Yeah.
it's what the report just came out yesterday about the banks being 7 times more exposed to unrealized.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. Over leverage in '08. Mhm.
Yeah, compared to
Yep.
2008, like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, 7 times more. Like that's
Yeah.
the realization is starting to set in for people
Oh,
of,
yeah.
and I think that was even today to have a red day, like, okay,
Mhm.
we've had
Yeah.
6 weeks of gains. Like this
It's
is ridiculous.
crazy.
This is
It's crazy.
stupid. This is so
Yes.
fake.
Yeah.
It's like this
Yeah.
is so overblown. This
Oh,
thing
yeah.
is just ready to,
Yep.
contract. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
Well,
looking at banks. That's what
yeah.
I'm looking at going, Bank of America, Warren
Mhm.
Buffett's been yanking his money out of there as fast as he
Yes.
can. Like
Yes.
that's a good place. I personally think that's a good place for a put option.
Yep.
Not putting any recommendations out there for other people. I'm not a financial advisor.
Yeah, the bank. Well, we had a bank failure on Friday. It wasn't talked about much. It was a small bank in Oklahoma, but
God.
second bank failure of 2024.
Mm,
And so that's started. You can tell they're desperate because they cooked the numbers way more this month. I mean, when the jobs numbers came in 100,000 over expectations, is like anybody who pays attention to this knows it's BS. But hey, buy it, buy the news, and this has been a buy everything market, good or bad. And that's, I mean, I've been watching this very closely for the last 2.5 years, the markets, and I came in not knowing much, trial by fire, became a borderline expert on just watching things, and I can tell you that it's absolutely insane. Nothing makes sense.
yeah.
There's nobody can agree on what's going to happen except for the fact even the people who say there's a big run up coming still see a downturn major in the next 6 months to a year. Like nobody can avoid that part. It's
Yeah.
like it's so obvious. It's just when and how high do we go before that? That's all people argue about anymore, except for CNBC, who thinks there's a soft landing, but they have to say that. So, but that's
It's
where we're
so
going.
Yeah, it's so weird to see gold going up with the market. It's like these
Hmm.
two are inverse, like they should not
Yeah.
be going up together. Like it's so bizarre to see the flight to safety, which is gold, at the same time as the market continuing to climb.
Hmm.
It just shows that there's total deception going on. I mean,
Yeah.
even those jobs numbers, it was the first time that they had cooked in to the job reporting government employees.
Yeah.
So that's how they fudge their numbers that time around.
Mhm.
And it's like,
Yeah.
government employees don't contribute anything to the GDP. Like, that's crazy. Like,
Yep.
that's a suck on the
Mhm.
country. It's not, they
Yeah.
don't produce.
Yep.
And yeah, it's wild to watch what's going on.
Mhm.
And I the same thought you had, as far as like, I'm surprised it hasn't crashed yet. They've
Mhm.
really been able to keep it up.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it doesn't seem like that has capitalized
Mm-mm.
for Kamala. Like,
No, that's
she hasn't
amazing.
been like, "Look at my amazing economy, and look, I'm
Mhm.
killing it." Like,
Yeah, she's tried.
it's like nobody's feeling that, because you're like, I'm
Mhm.
paying $8 for eggs. Like,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so people feel the real economy, and
Mhm.
it's not believable.
Yeah, and again, to me, it's like you said this too. Like they set themselves up, and I think of where it says like the Lord can turn what the enemy intends for good. The it's very much like they just have such a disconnect from regular people, and they live in their high society. They only talk to people who multimillionaires. None of them are affected. I mean, I listen to several shows that have people on both sides calling in and stuff. Like the host might not be both sides, but they and it is amazing to me the disconnect of people who call in
Mm.
on the Democratic side. They're either like, and actually I haven't even heard like a poor person call in a long time that's voted for Kamala. It's always the rich and the super duper college educated, which
Mm.
is just college indoctrinated at this point, because they've lost all critical thinking skills. But the fact is like the leaders are in the same boat, and they only talk to each other, and so they think, well, if we keep the stock market up, everybody will think it's all great. If they can still borrow money, they'll think it's great. And they totally, I mean, you can hear the frustration when I watch, say, a clip from CNN or Rachel Maddow. I can't reach the whole show. Nobody can who's sane, but you can watch a clip of Rachel Maddow. And they're just so frustrated every time they're like, but the economy's good. You can see that's like real. They don't understand how we're too stupid to understand it. But nobody is following this narrative except for the people they already have in their bag, and there's a very small percentage of them in those high levels. And so yeah, it's amazing because the money they've spent to keep this economy even up the way it is and not really win any votes because of it is
Uh,
unreal. It's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it's wild. Just the last 2 weeks to think she had that horrible interview on Fox, and it was like, "Oh, you're
Mhm.
done. Like, you are done now." And
Yeah.
then you have Trump do the comedy dinner
Oh, so
with
good.
the Catholics. That was so brilliantly well done. And then
Yeah.
he's crushing it. And then he's at McDonald's, and it's like,
Mhm.
how freaking relatable is this guy? Like,
Yeah.
just joking around with
Oh,
people.
yeah.
Like, oh man, like he's just doing everything in this kind of way
Mhm.
that, like, I wasn't, I was a baby when Reagan was around,
Oh, me too, yeah.
I'm like, this
Yeah.
is probably what it was like to watch him
Mhm.
be, like a real person. And
Yes.
we haven't seen that in 40 years, like
Mhm.
we have Chuck Schumer out there putting cheese on a raw burger on the 4th of July on
Oh,
his
man.
grill, and it's
So
like,
funny.
dude doesn't even know how to cook a burger. Like, holy cow! Like, how are we
Yeah, I
letting
know.
these people make laws for us? Like,
Yeah.
this is
Unreal.
insane.
They just have no idea, it's so funny. So to talk like a little bit future, I want to do two quick things. So first, I'd love to hear just your 5-minute prepper speech, and
Okay.
then because it's really good.
Yeah.
I've listened to your stuff, but we'll just do the 5-minute version, and
Cool.
then
Yeah.
I'd love to talk just as we close out for just big picture, like if things turn the right way, as
Mhm.
people are very optimistic about the future, myself and you, I'd love to hear kind of just some of your thoughts and I don't care if we just speculate and have some fun and get a little crazy, but just kind of like what could happen in the next 5-10 years if we really do start seeing this open up. So we'll start with a quick prepper speech to get us through a season, hopefully a very short season, if at all, and then talk bigger picture.
Awesome. I love it. So I just recently did a video where I went through like 20 items that you should have on hand. And
that's a longer version, people. So go to his channel
Right.
and watch that if you want the longer version. It's
and I
very
don't have it memorized, so we won't do that. But what I can tell you is I live here outside of Charlotte, and it's such a good wake up call in the tragedy of what we've seen happen like 2 hours from my house. I can drive over to the mountains and see the devastation. I was there a week ago, actually. A week ago today, I was there helping for a few days, and just the hurricane and what it did. And to think you're 800 miles inland.
Yeah.
You're in the mountains. You're never thinking, oh, a hurricane's going to hit me. Like, never.
Or flooding in the mountains.
It's
crazy.
Yeah, it's so like you can't wrap your mind around it. And then but it gets you that wake up call of like, am I ready? Have I prepared? Have I?
Yeah.
At the core, a leader needs to be responsible. You are required as a leader. And if you're the leader of your family, you're the leader of yourself. You're the leader of your marriage. You're the leader of your kids. Whatever, you need to be able to take care of what the Lord has put in your hands.
Yeah.
And, if you might be the one person on your street that's prepared. And what does that mean? Well, I'm not saying go into a bomb shelter and build one in your backyard, doomsday prepper. No, not that level. And I had friends with Y2K. I had a friend growing up. His parents' 55-gallon drum of wheat in their basement. Nothing happened. They were eating it for the next 20 years as it was expiring. And it's like, that's hilarious. That is not the goal. Like, that's not what we're going for. Buy the stuff you already buy. Like we think about the port strike a few weeks ago. Everybody's running in and buying all this extra toilet paper. I was in Costco a week ago and there was no toilet paper. And why? Because people had cleared it out. Even though that's manufactured, the top 5 biggest companies manufacture it here in the US, none of it's coming through the port. But people went crazy because we don't
think about that.
You're like, it's an emergency. What did we do for COVID? We bought toilet paper.
Yeah, we're gonna have to poop.
It's like COVID wasn't an explosive diarrhea event. Like, what are you doing? Like, we went crazy with that. But that's the limit of most people's understanding of prepping. And so I would recommend to anybody just ask in Google, what are the emergency preparation items I should have on hand? A first aid kit, flashlights, batteries, can opener. Make sure you have one that's not electric, because you go buy a shelf of canned food and you can't open it. You think through the basics like this. Now that it's starting to get colder, I highly recommend have your propane tanks for your grills. Have them ready, because you can use them for a little fire pit. You can attach a heater onto it. You can use it for cooking your food. Like, you have a lot of options there. So, have your propane tanks, have your water, have, whatever medication you need, try to buy it in advance so that you have it, because the port strike could have really screwed us up if it kept going. I mean, if that thing lasted, a lot of medications come from other countries. So, there's a lot of, things there. And especially with where we're headed, whatever your beliefs are, around self-defense. See, when I look at the Bill of Rights, I think of them in terms of natural law, in the sense that, hey, my cat has claws, so he can defend himself. I, as a human, need something to defend myself.
Yeah, no
My
joke.
cat can meow as long as he wants, and nobody's going to stop him. He
Mhm.
has freedom of speech. I should have freedom of speech. I have as much or more rights than my animal.
Mhm.
And in the same way, like, I don't invade his space. He doesn't, that's the, your right to privacy. Like, you have all these 10 Bill of Rights are based off of looking at nature and natural law and going, hey, this is how our creator designed it for us. And for us, we need the ability to defend ourselves.
So good. Yeah.
So, whatever you need to do to get your house in order for food, water, power outage. I mean, they've been telling us for 2 years, the World Economic Forum, that the next pandemic will be a cyber pandemic where the lights go out. And we literally are watching it in Cuba right now.
Yes.
10 million people, the entire island with no electricity. And they're saying, well, we're trying to figure it out. It could be a few days. Well, what if you're there and you didn't get your flashlights and you didn't get your water and you're hoping that your store is open to sell you something with no electricity?
Yeah.
Like, be ready. Like, you should be ready. And we usually don't. We usually kind of go, we will when the time comes. The time is here. Freaking do it. Like, Roswell, New Mexico is flooding right now. That doesn't make any sense. You don't know that that's going to hit you. The UK is getting about to be hit with a hurricane. When does that ever happen? Like,
never.
It's so bizarre what's happening all around the world right now. Like this summer, Dubai getting hammered with floods.
Oh yeah.
In Dubai. Like, this is the time to be prepared. And on the financial side, I do. All right. This is not financial advice.
Exactly.
My personal thoughts and opinions.
You're like a pro on this.
Oh, watch out for them lawsuits,
Oh yeah. Trust me.
If I personally went the direction of gold, not silver. I've had friends who went and did silver. Cool, good for them. I hope that it takes off like crazy. I hear great things about the idea that silver is also used for manufacturing, and so it has more demand. But gold is really the standard around the world for the most, valued.
Yes.
And so, and I was looking at it the other day. The gold that I got in May of 2023 has gone up 34% from May until now.
Wow.
And I'm like, 18 months. And I'm sitting on it going, this is awesome because it doesn't really go down.
Yeah.
Like, gold is like such a stable thing. Most things that you get a 34% return, it's pretty risky, like it's a more high risk. You usually don't get 34% on gold, there's decades where it hardly moved.
Yes.
So it's and I think there's a lot more to where that's going to go. I mean, even this week, as we're watching the BRICS meeting that's happening, that's coming up in a couple days, 2 days, actually. No, tomorrow. I think they start tomorrow.
Oh, okay. I haven't watched that.
So Russia is hosting it, and they have a whole bunch of announcements. They have an annual meeting, and this time they're going to probably admit another 17 to 20 countries to join.
Oh, wow.
And they might announce their currency and that it's going to be gold backed.
Really? How did I miss this?
He mentioned that it might also have silver backing, which is part of why silver skyrocketed this week.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Putin said something about that. And
man, I read all the news and I miss that. That's wild. It slipped on underneath me somehow.
Yeah.
I've been so focused I get on the election stuff, probably.
Our country's got a lot going on, but but that could be a big shift, because
I would say so.
If you think about JP Morgan and what's the other one? Bank of America, they have been shorting silver.
Yes. Oh yeah.
to
Majorly.
control the number.
Yeah.
So if Putin says, hey, we're going to back the currency with gold and silver, silver goes up,
Yeah.
all those shorts that they have go down.
Oh yeah.
So they've lost billions in the last week, and the banks were already in trouble. So they're getting hammered by what's happening with the BRICS. So it's really
Great point.
interesting dynamics going on there.
Yeah.
With all that, the preparation side, I would still say I recommend gold. People are going to Costco. Costco's selling
I
gold.
know, that's wild.
You can go buy your gold at Costco.
And when you buy, guys, just it's make sure you get physical is the point. Like, because a lot of the paper, that's how they've also suppressed the price. Is not just it's by selling fake, amounts, I should say. So there's that too.
Yeah, I agree. That's definitely a good way to go. Is physical. The other piece is crypto. I'm strong believer in cryptocurrency and where that's headed. For me, I diversified a little bit, but I'm really in the top 3 of Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP. That's where I'm aiming. With a few little altcoins in there. But those are the directions I personally have aimed. Do you have any thoughts on crypto?
Yes, I love Bitcoin and XRP. I personally haven't had enough to invest in much yet, and I'm hoping to start shifting things over. But yes, I greatly believe in Bitcoin. I think the Trump stuff on it is very bullish, but I do believe also Bitcoin's kind of going to be more of like a store of value, kind of like a digital gold. So it might not have those big blow ups, but over time we'll just keep. Whereas XRP, I think, knowing that it's going to be helping do the transactions, especially the BRICS currency, if they ever get that up and running, that could be a monumental gain explosion. And so, yes, I have a lot of belief in XRP. Ethereum, not as much. And I just need to do some more research on that. My friend I have a friend who's very big into crypto. He doesn't like it as much because it's more centralized. And so he has issues with that, but I haven't done my own research enough to have an opinion.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, I'm glad you're in it.
And this crowd is very into it, especially XRP. I got some big XRP heads in here.
Yes, we're all hoping for something in the next few weeks. I mean, that's that's Trump saying, "I'm going to fire Gary Gensler." The SEC. Like, let's go.
We hate Gary Gensler here in the most Christian way possible.
I hate his thinking.
I hate his way of doing things. Yes.
Right.
I don't want him to die. I just don't want him to be in my markets.
Oh man. That's Well, I think that segues from preparedness to possible futures.
Real quick before you go there, did you see that Netflix movie Leave the World Behind, produced by the Obamas?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyways, when you were talking about some of the stuff with the cyber pandemic, there you go. They were trying to tell us something, whether or not they're able to pull it off, but that was a warning movie for sure.
Yes. That one and Civil War. They're trying to prep our minds. Yes. Yes. And that's, I think there's a lot more that's going to happen after the election than, we got a window of 75 days in between the election and January 20th.
Yeah, that's about right.
That window is going to be wild times. And, So the preparation, I mean, if you can prepare now while things are quiet, that would be good. Be ready now. But yeah, I mean, I see when we're on the other side of this, if you go back about 2 summers ago, Trump was releasing a whole bunch of these little videos of when I get in, we're going to do this. When I get in, we're going to do this. And he dropped a whole bunch of them. And I never hear people talk about it. But
I've forgotten about them, honestly. Yeah, but now I remember.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. If you go back and you look at them, they're all on his Agenda 47, all these clips and what he said he's going to do. And it's like he's been moving toward this, but he hasn't talked about them in ages. And what he's going to do to set up the American college university or something like that.
Mm.
This would be it would be free college, it would be paid for by the government, but it would the way that they would establish it was just like brilliantly accredited. The way it was processed, it just
Yeah.
there were so many details of what he laid out,
Mm.
and I haven't heard anybody mention these things. And it's like
Yeah.
I was just going back and I'm like, my favorite one, because this stuck in my brain. I went back and I had to watch it several times. I was like, did he really just say that? Is that everybody would have their own personal flying transport vehicle in their driveway?
What?
I was
I
like,
didn't catch that one.
what are you talking about? Like, how did that not make? How are they not like making fun of him on CNN?
Yeah.
Like, what is he,
Wow.
him and his space machines? Like, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
No explanation, but he just says it like, we're going to do this. He says we're going to
Wow.
build 10 new cities. This is how we're going to solve the housing
I
crisis.
have heard that one. I remember that one. Yeah.
10 new cities. They're all going to be,
Free up
space
federal
cities.
land. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, all these plans that have been laid out. And I just think, man, when we get to the other side of, even as he said, we have the most oil under our country in the whole world.
Yeah.
And you start thinking in terms of like, I've been to 35 countries in my travels, and he talked about Saudi Arabia and how, the wealth that they have. And we think of like Dubai or United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia and the overwhelming wealth that people have. And it's like, we actually have the resource to have a country like that. We could have that.
Yes.
If we were not under the Federal Reserve loan sharks, if we put up the border and we had a clear border and we cleared out the 25 million plus illegals that are here. And you don't, it doesn't even have to be violent. Like, you could very easily say you have 30
100%.
days, 30 days to get out of the country
on your own. Yeah.
And then after that, we're going to come looking for you. Like, a lot of them would just clear out. Like, that's great. So we clean up the border, we clean up the immigration, we remove the taxes, we put tariffs in place, we gold back the currency, we put Bitcoin in for trading between countries. We establish all these things. We put peace back in place.
Yes.
Now, Israel, Iran, Russia, Ukraine, Taiwan, China, all that stuff calms down again. And we start moving toward 10 new cities and all the other things that have been suppressed. Like, this is the piece where people don't even realize.
They don't.
The 1951 Patent Act that hid over 6,000 patents, including all these things from Nikola Tesla.
Yes.
And people don't realize that, or maybe they've never heard that Donald Trump's uncle was a professor at MIT.
Yep.
That the government brought him all of the boxes of the inventions and documents from Nikola Tesla and had him go through them. Wow. So Trump is aware more than probably anybody of what is hidden from us.
I mean, free electricity is one of the things a lot of people say is very possible with Tesla,
Yeah, I mean, he did it at the World's Fair in Chicago. He lit up 100,000 light bulbs in the whole city, and then General Electric, which was Westinghouse, came to him and said, "Well, how do we charge? How do we charge for this electricity?"
Yeah, and
because they couldn't figure out a way to monetize it, they had to take a step away from free electricity. And to think, like, we could be moving into an age of technology unlike anything we can imagine right now.
Yes.
And that's, when I think on earth as it is in heaven, well, is there cancer in heaven? No. Should there be cancer here? Should there be fluoride in the water? Should our food be loaded with chemicals? Should our kids be getting autism? 1 out of every 22 kids with autism.
Unbelievable now. Yeah.
all this stuff. Like, no, like we need to be moving toward the healthiest, the weight, the obesity, the 75% of Americans that are obese. Like, we need to be moving in this direction of health that is health financially, health physically, in so many ways that I think then will give so much more of a chance even to marriages and families working.
Oh yeah.
Because like, okay, let's take all these brutal things off of everybody. The depression, the anxiety, the obesity, the struggle. Everybody's fighting uphill.
Yeah, we don't even know how much we are.
Yeah, with this weight on us that
we don't even know it.
We're clueless. We're clueless.
We just live it every day. It's such a gradual increase. It's the frogs in boiling water. That's who we are. I mean, you and I are the same age. I just turned 41. And remember the 90s? It was like everybody had energy. Depression was like a rarity. And if somebody had it, you were just like, well, that's pretty serious. I'm so sorry. It wasn't like trendy. It wasn't like you're cool if you're depressed and anxious, and
like your one friend on medication.
And there's no way it's just because of awareness. That's what they always use to hide it behind. But if you, I don't know, did you ever read RFK's book, The Real Anthony Fauci?
I haven't. No.
Oh man, you'll love that. Being a data guy like you,
it's like a murder mystery. Like,
well, it also talks about the whole health thing. And reading that book, and RFK always comes with all the receipts. He's a lawyer. He's brilliant. He talked about, as of 1978, there was so little cancer in America that the American Cancer Society almost went bankrupt. And there was our health standards were so high. That's when we peaked in life expectancy. We had, there was almost no childhood disease. Obesity was like less than 10%. We were extremely healthy as a society. And then Fauci came in, and all of a sudden the pharmaceuticals started finding ways to monetize things. The tobacco companies were able to buy the food companies and make them more addictive. And anyways, it's just been a progression ever since the 80s. But in the 70s, we almost had that health space that we're talking about getting to now. And RFK knows it, and he's seen it. And that's why he wants to lead us back there. And he's so passionate about it. And that's why he says Dr. Fauci is the most evil man who's ever lived in recorded history, because of all the deaths and stuff has happened because of all that. And so AIDS, all that stuff too. But anyways, the fact is we've been there, and that's without the modern technology we have. So is it possible? It's not only possible, people, it should be what we're already living in. And so that I completely agree with you there. The health, I don't think it's any, it was such a God design to bring Trump's fighting against the political spirit, the financial spirit, treading that, and then alongside him bringing in the expert of our health, but also the expert to dismantle the deep state that could completely come alongside Trump and do that. I love that RFK joined him. And so I agree with you. I think health will greatly improve in the next few years. We get through this. And I think we're going to wake up. And this is my belief and hope, because I feel like we've all been kind of under a shadow since about the Iraq war, since 2001. It just, everything has felt different. I don't know. And maybe that's just subjective, but I just remember as a kid, and maybe it was because I was a kid, but it just seemed like even adults were lighter. There was more fun. There was less worry. There was more moving towards stuff in the future. All that just seemed to be less careless, just more, there's more joy, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think 2001 was the beginning of ending that. And then it really ramped up, in my opinion, once Obama came in. And obviously the Bush stuff, I like disgusted. I voted for him twice, but I was a big Bushy back in the day, but Trump woke me up to that. But anyways, I just feel like we're going to get through this, and in a couple of years, we're all going to be like, oh my God, we're back. That's kind of what I feel like it's going to be. Just a fog is going to lift that we didn't even realize we'd been under, because it's been going on for so long. So it's a personal opinion I have, but I do feel like there might be something like that happens.
Man, that's a beautiful picture. I guess I'm thinking back, like being a little kid
Mhm.
and seeing the Berlin Wall come down on TV, and
Mhm.
and then seeing us do the under George Bush Senior
Yep.
going into Iraq and doing, I
Mhm.
remember seeing tanks and stuff on TV,
Yeah.
and so it's always seemed like there was something like,
Mhm.
oh, the Russians and
Oh, yeah, for sure.
USSR and communists, and then
Mhm.
oh, now Saddam Hussein, and oh, Saddam Hussein again,
Yeah.
and I think the shift with 2001 was where it went from like all the scary stuff was out there and
Mhm.
America was
Yes.
like, oh, we're the beacon of hope and
Mhm.
freedom, to
Yeah.
like, I have to take my shoes and my belt off, and like I don't feel this
Yeah.
freedom. Like the freedom felt like it left.
Yeah.
I think that
Well, you
was
and I also grew up, sorry, real quick,
yeah,
just
yeah,
I
yeah.
was the thought I had is you and I also grew up in the fruit of Reagan,
Yeah.
which Reagan didn't do everything we would have hoped him to do, and I think Trump will finish the job, and JFK obviously didn't even really get a chance to do much, but we got 8 years of Reagan, and so because he didn't get rid of the Federal Reserve and stuff, so none of it went away for good, but I
Right.
think he backtracked so much that we got a little window of about 10 to 15 years
Mhm.
where we got a lot of it, and maybe that's why it seems like the 90s and the 80s, late 80s were so great. I don't know. It's just a thought I just had as you were talking.
Could have been TGIF. I don't know, man.
Urkel.
Now you're gonna have flashbacks. Oh man. But yeah, it really I think the shift was like the problems were out there
Mhm.
and we thought we were good. And then we started to see, oh no, the tyranny is here too. Like that,
Mhm.
and that just kept growing. And then I think Obama, that was when it became woke,
Yeah.
was 2008. Now everything has gone into hyperdrive
Mm.
with LGBT and all of that. And it just went. And I mean, obviously the last 3.5 years has just been, I feel like it's been a blur since
Mhm. Oh my god.
2020.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like this mental blur for
No
everybody.
joke. Yep.
And it's wild too, because we had Christian prophets who were talking about 2020, and at the time
Mhm.
it seemed kind of corny when they
Mhm.
talked about like, you're gonna see with 2020 vision, you're gonna have clarity. And it
Mhm.
sounded generic and it sounded a little corny, but it's like, no, they were like dead on. Like people actually
Mhm.
now are
Yes.
seeing what's really happening.
They
And
really were.
the last 4 years, I think it's been painful to see
Mhm.
what's really
Yes.
happening,
Oh
to
my
go like,
gosh.
oh, like this is so evil and so
Mhm.
corrupt and
Mhm.
so out of control. Like this was the swamp, because people point fingers at Trump going, well, why didn't you drain the swamp in your 4 years?
Yeah.
Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And it's like, oh, now we see it, because it's freaking everything, everywhere, from top
Yeah.
to bottom. Like
Yeah.
one guy couldn't do it all in the first 4 years while the whole
Yes.
country was still asleep. Like
Mhm.
he had to wake 70% of us up to go,
Mhm.
I see it now. Like,
So
oh
true. Yeah, he
yeah,
would never have been able to do it even if he got reelected in 2020. There was too much opposition still in the people.
yeah,
And as much as it sucks that we had to go through this last 4 years, but I can see more and more how there is a hand of providence and even allowing that to happen, whether it was planned on their part or not. There are some weird things out there. I'm like, I hold them in tension. I'm like, could that stuff be true that Trump knew? And all? Yeah. Could it also not be true? And it's just kind of God's guidance getting us? Yeah, absolutely. Either way, or both are true too. I don't know. But it's clear looking back how we've been in an awakening process, and that is clearly by design, whether it's spiritual or physical or both. It's clearly a design to wake up the people, and now we're basically at our choice. And I think that's what it's coming down to. And I feel good about the choice. And but hey, man, it's been hour 35. So
yeah.
I think we're gonna have to end this. I know we both have families and got to be up in the morning. And people out there, I think, Jonathan, would you be willing to come back again sometime and do some Q&A?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
if you don't mind, I'll do a promo for a sec.
Yes.
I have a new series that I've been putting out just on eschatology.
Awesome.
And if anybody wants to go check it out, you just go to Jon Welton, WELTON.com/register. And it's a free series. It's a lecture
awesome.
series. I take you through eschatology, help you understand why you don't need to be afraid of the book of Revelation, why you don't need to think, that Trump is the Antichrist, or any crazy other theories that are out there. It'll bring peace to your heart if you're afraid of any of that stuff. And yeah, man, just
Love
something
it
for your viewers to check out.
Oh, absolutely, guys. I can't speak highly enough about Jonathan's stuff. His stuff has touched me. And I can say that as a data researcher guy, I have gone through all Jonathan's stuff. He was like my gateway drug. And then I went and researched it all from every other angle. And I honestly can tell you that his stuff is legit, and it holds up under scrutiny. I have found it. He's impacted a lot of my insights and beliefs about where we could be going and what's happened. So, and you guys know that I have a few Patreon subscribers that I've taught on some of this stuff too, but Jonathan is the best. So go check out his stuff, and it's free. It's fantastic. I can't recommend it enough. And John, yeah, we'll get you back here, and I'd love to talk about that and Q&A, because I know I had so many questions come up, but I think the conversation was just so good tonight. I felt like, guys, we just need to stay focused on this tonight. So, but thank you, viewers. I'll be back on tomorrow night, as usual, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and we'll cover the news. But I hope you guys enjoyed this tonight, and God bless y'all. And we're going to close it out. So I'll see you guys all tomorrow. So thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, guys.